Hi, I'm Josie Dye here for Billboard Canada's Women in Music panel. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Meg Symsyk. I am CEO of FACTOR, where we give investment funding to a number of different Canadian musicians and Canadian-owned companies.
Hi, I'm Sarah Cummings, and I am the Director of Radio and iHeartRadio and Orbit Media.
Hi, I'm Kristen Burke. I'm President of Warner Music Canada.
I'm Margaret McGuffin, and I'm CEO of Music Publishers Canada.
Okay, so no pressure, Josie, at all, with all of you guys here hanging out. We were kind of talking off air a little bit about the first question, which is a little daunting because I think it's a lot about confidence and when did you get your confidence? You know, as women, I think in the past, it's been really hard for me, it's especially to feel confident
doing my job. And I got to a certain age where I was like, okay, I can do this. So I really want to know, Megan, maybe I can start with you, Meg, what was that moment where you finally were like, yeah, I'm good at what I do?
I actually felt when I started working internationally and realized how I was received internationally coming back to work in Canada, I felt differently. And I felt that I felt that confidence then that I knew what I was doing and I had a handle on my skill set.
So it was only until you were outside of Canada.
Yes.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how that works, right?
It was that external validation maybe.
Yeah.
That I was good at what I did.
What about you, Sarah?
It's so interesting. And I'm Meg, we've known each other a long time. So I think some of it too is you grow up in this industry a bit, right? You did, I know I did too, where you know some of the same people and you always feel like, where am I here? And so like to take on that leadership role amongst the people that you've always sort of worked with and known is tough to gain that confidence. So similarly, for me, it was going to a totally new city, to a very new leadership group of people. And I had tasked with launching a radio station under the worst circumstances possible. I won't bore you with the details, but it was a really tough license. And that was the first moment that I went, okay, I'm now around all new people. And this is where I thought, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm not being propped up by other people all the time. I am actually really good at what I do. And I think that was probably it for me. And I still think it comes and goes. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't say it's there every day, all the time, but I think that was it for sure.
I think I'd have to say it was many, many years ago, back at when I was at Universal, we always had our big weekly label meetings. And I remember literally one week going and taking a seat at the table. So I always used to sort of sit on the back, seats, not at the big boardroom table. And I remember just one day sort of coming in, I don't know what gave me that confidence, but being able to go sit at that boardroom table and being able to actually finally sort of, very slowly start to kind of put my hand up and sort of, voice my thoughts and my opinions, which started to be received well. And I remember just that kind of building some confidence for me. And I think I just took it from there, and being able to then every sort of week be able to like literally sit at the table really kind of made me feel like I knew what I was talking about. It gave me that confidence in myself every week to be able to kind of speak up and even to kind of show my leadership skills.
It's funny because I had a mentor a long time ago, and we will talk about mentors eventually, but I had a mentor who said, even when you're an intern, just ask one question in a meeting. Not a million, just one. Just ask one question. So you took a seat and you asked questions, which that's amazing. Margaret?
Very similar to Meg, I actually left the music industry to go into the book sector. And it was coming back into the music industry and taking what I had learned from this other very different but similar sector. And for this role, I never applied for this job. They came to me and said, we want you to be the face of music publishers.
That's a lot of pressure though, too.
Yeah, but it was a job I always wanted. I'm a real geek that way. I really love the trade association world. I've worked in a few roles and I had my eye on this job like 20 years ago.
I brought up mentors, so let's go right there. I used to say that it's not always above you that you have to look for a mentor. Sometimes it can be beside you, right? And I think as women, oftentimes, there are not a lot of people above us. So how do you find mentors? What should you be looking for?
I mean, I've had many mentors throughout my career. And I think for me, it was always about finding somebody who, truly supports you. and is invested in you and genuinely cares about your success and well-being. And those have been the most amazing mentors for me, who always then really wanted to invest, their support and their advice in my development. And so I've always kind of looked for people like that. And my best mentor was somebody who ended up actually was my boss. And again, she just truly was completely invested in me.
And do we need mentors? Like, is that how I think that we
absolutely, we need mentors. And I think mentors in your workplace is really important if you can find that person. I also find mentors outside of your workplace are really important, especially when you're thinking about a change. You can't talk about it in your current environment. And having somebody who you can talk to over your career to move where you need to move is really important. There's also great organized mentorships. There's the informal ones we're talking about, but there's also Women in Music Canada has a mentorship program that rolls and has different deadlines for application. And that's a great way to meet somebody.
So what do I do if I'm maybe like for one of you, if I say, hey, Sarah, I want you to be my mentor. Like, how do I go about doing that? Do I send you an email? Do I stalk you down when you're walking down the street? Because I've done that before. Not in that way, but I'll see somebody who I look up to in my neighborhood, and then I'll just send them a little text going, hey, I just saw you walking down the street. Just like a subtle little nudge, right? So they know that, hey, I'm out there and I'm looking for some sort of help here. What do you do?
I think that's a great question. I mean, first of all, I think personally, if somebody wants me to be their mentor, I'm flattered. I think that's initially, okay, so there's something there. But I think then it comes down to really knowing what you want. If you're asking me for that, what do you want out of it? What is it that you're looking for? Do you want, and I think, because I do think mentorship can take on all different, there's organized, there's informal, there's friends that you go to that you just have that relationship with that will tell you straight when something, and I think that's really important. So I think I think you need to know what you want, be respectful of the time that you're asking for, and then follow through on it, and just make sure that if you say you want this out of it and this is what you're asking for, just to be there and be present and to take where it makes sense, if you've got a good mentor, to take their advice, and I think sometimes it goes both ways as well.
Meg, you are like super powerful in this industry. You probably don't have time to be a mentor. Like, oh, well, you are. No, you don't have a lot of time to be a mentor. Like, how do you give back?
I want to back up a little bit on the mentorship part. I was a rower in my youth and in university, and I realized through that process, you can be a really good athlete and set goals and have your small wins along the way, but a coach helps you tweak just those little things to have a better personal best. And so I've always felt that whether it's inside the industry or external, which I've benefited from a lot, it is important to look for people that will give you skill sets that you maybe are your weakest and not your strengths, so that you're learning from somebody where you can get the most upside from that relationship. And so when building a team or looking at what I need to do, I start with myself on where are my weaknesses that I need to work on, and I look for those people in the industry so I can learn more about publishing and ask those silly questions or dumb questions, so to speak, quietly one-on-one, where I'm like, can you explain this to me? I really need to understand how this works so I can figure out how I can come to the table and be a good collaborator. I'm going to focus on you for a second because you've also managed like some really cool bands and bands that I think like I would be so incredibly intimidated to be working with these bands. How were you able? Who do you think is intimidating? Well, I mean, like anyone, even just. I mean, we could go on and on. Because I don't think of them that way, so I'm super intrigued that you think
working with like Rush or working with like Josh and Brody, or any of those artists. Like, how did you get confidence to do that?
You know what? I have to say, all three, Josh, Geddy Lee, particularly. Brody have given me amazing feedback over the years. Josh, I remember we were on tour in Australia and Brody was opening with, Nine Inch Nails and Queens of the Stone Age. And he's like, Megs, you need to read this book. And it was the 48 Laws of Power. He's like, I see you give away your power all day and you do all this work and you let other people take credit for it. Why are you doing that? And never occurred to me. And I started reading the book and I was like crying by like, chapter 4 going, oh my God, I've just handed it on a platter to everyone. And so I really kind of took that back a little bit and started just sticking up for myself on things that I brought to the table. And I'm not trying to do anything other than just get credit for being at the table and contributing. And then also, I feel like, especially in an industry, you need a little bit of a protector sometimes, because there are people who are competitive and are not as collaborative. And, they have been protectors in a way too, in an industry where they see that you do a really good job for them. They are going to protect you with other people that are trying to come in and on your kind of territory, so to speak. So I could write a book on like dinners with Geddy Lee.
Can we just do that? No, but I love that, because also like the mentorship, the idea of the mentorship being, someone who's I guess more powerful than you in the industry, doesn't always have to be. And I love that sometimes my competitors are my mentors, right? And they don't even know it. Like they don't even know it, but I'm constantly watching what they're doing and they're mentoring me in a way that they don't even know about.
The best athletes do that too. The best athletes have other ones that push them. So when you're training, just like we're, coming to show up to work and you set goals, you're thinking of, how to be better. And I think that's the part where, there's a reason why they say sometimes that, it's those people that collaborate and those that have had goal setting as a framework in their life do better in whatever industry that they're in.
Well, let's talk about collaborating, because that's a really nice natural step. I don't know if it's the fact that, there haven't been enough women working together that is the problem when it comes to women collaborating. But I do think that we haven't learned how to collaborate very well, and we're just getting there. So let's find out, what do you think the benefits of women collaborating are?
Well, I don't think I think that's not only just in the music industry, but all industries, we have been taught that there may only be one seat, so we all need to compete amongst each other, and we're not. We're competing amongst everyone. And there's enough room for all of us to be successful because there's that many positions. I never felt competitive with Kristen when we were at Universal together. We were in different sectors, but I championed her and vice versa, and so we were on a similar team. And I don't know if you were referring to who I thought you were for your mentor, but she was also a mentor for me. And in terms of giving that feedback, and there was space for all of us to succeed. And I think that happens when you do have females in a position to have a path to watch of how to rise and how to show everyone on the team that everyone has their individual success possible.
I love organizing people. Meg knows that. I love organizing people. I'm always inviting people to be together. So when that was my first job, it was the legal affairs people that had all of the labels. When I moved through, now it's pulling all the trade organizations together. And we talk, and it's cross-sectoral too. I talk to the film industry. I talk to the book industry. I try to learn what Interactive Ontario's doing. And you can organize those collaborations. You don't have to wait to be invited in.
That's really great. I love that.
Yeah. I think collaboration really is, it's about empowerment. I think it's about women collaborating is more about more visibility, and really about sort of what you're both saying too, about kind of networking, community building. And I agree with you, Meg, that it feels like it has only really been that sort of those few seats and us kind of competing, but I feel like it really is different today. And I really do feel like women are, collaborating more supportive of each other. And, I think there have been those times where it kind of felt like women were kind of trying to push other women down. I don't feel that as much anymore. I feel like we really are more collaborative and really kind of feel that empowerment together.
I think it's our superpower. I really do think, and I think that's why the more women, it just almost becomes like you're building more and more all the time, because it's what we do best. And I know I've had people over time that think, but when you're being collaborative or you're asking for input from everybody, you're getting the team on board or whatever that is, it can take more time, but it also tends to pay off, and you tend to be more successful with it, right? So Kristen, I totally agree. I think that when I look back 15 years ago or 20 years ago, there literally was one seat. Yeah. And now there's many. There's an endless amount of seats.
And I think that seat that was given is usually given in a time of crisis where collaboration was needed to move forward, and it was given to a female so that potentially if it didn't go well, it was also the woman that was like, oh, that didn't work. See? And I'm not bringing up a negative, but I'm bringing up a negative on how it's turned into a positive moving forward. And there was a great line that you always say.
Oh, it's the glass cliff
Yes.
phenomenon, right?
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
the idea that, and truly, there's so many things that you can look at historically when it's crisis. Women are put in a position, because in a lot of cases, men don't want that job because they know that's a dangerous job. Yeah. Women will take the job because what if it's our only shot at the job? So we'll take it. Mm-hmm. If it goes well, because they are collaborative, they are building teams, they are doing all that sort of thing, buy-in, then the company or the industry looks great. And if it goes sideways, well, that's why you don't put women in charge. But I mean, that isn't over time. And I think it's, maybe so many people have gotten their positions because of that. And I hope that's historical, and I certainly don't think it just applies to women. I think that could be said for anybody that, maybe wasn't the original traditional choice for those positions.
I did get assigned the hardest acts to work with, I think,
of course,
for that exact thing. And the irony is they actually taught me the most and helped me move up faster than if I hadn't been.
Yeah.
So there's something to that.
Isn't that funny? That's why I was like, Josh Brody, good luck with that. What about just support in general for women? Like the fact that collaboration can lead to support as well. Like oftentimes women are juggling more than just one thing. Like we are, doing 1,000 things in our head at once. Just the support of having another woman and collaborating with her, I think, is huge, right? So yeah. Anyway, that was just my statement. Let's talk about, don't you love this one? Let's talk about advice to your younger self. I remember someone always saying, you got to fall, you got to make mistakes, and then you learn from them. And I remember thinking, like, I never learn from my mistakes. Like, that's really bad. And then I fell. And then I realized that it wasn't about learning from my mistakes, but it was about not being afraid to fall. Right? Like the more you fall, the more confidence you have. And you're like, whatever, I fell before, I can fall again. That was kind of my big wake up call. Advice to your younger self.
I have always volunteered. I came from a volunteer family, and so I'm always jumping into things to volunteer. I've been on the advisory board of Music Counts for 20 years, still love it. Started off when I was in my 20s on the board of UNICEF Canada. And jumping in and volunteering, I would tell my younger self that is valuable because you learn skills, but you also meet great connections and great friends, both from a work point of view and a life point of view. Yeah. And it's been the most valuable thing for me. And I give that advice to lots of young women when I meet with them to mentor.
Yeah. That's been sort of like my thing is that I do my best to volunteer as much as possible. And the fulfillment it also gives you, and I know that sounds very selfish, but it also really does fill up your cup,
I was the trainer on my daughter's hockey team. Mm-hmm. I was on the daycare board. I have sat on other boards of various sizes, and it's really fulfilling.
It's incredible.
I feel like there's lots of advice I could give to my younger self, but I would say stay true to yourself. And be authentic and own your uniqueness. And I think that's one thing as I've gone through my career, and had lots of different bumps and things and challenges to face, is that I have always stayed true to myself. And I think it's easy to sometimes feel like you need to act a different way or you need to do something differently to feel like you need to advance. And that's never been me. And I've always wanted to just work really hard, stay really curious, keep learning, all of those things to be able to advance my career, but never let it affect who I am.
So I'm taking my heels off right now.
Yes.
Get me my jean jacket. This is not me. No, that's really great because it's really easy to just fall into to what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sarah?
It's a great question. How long do we have? So much advice. No, I think I would have told myself to stop and enjoy the moment and the things that were happening at that time. Because I think, and maybe it was the time, maybe it was what I'm not sure what it was, but I was always like, what's next? Mm-hmm. And maybe trying to overcompensate. I'm not sure what it was, but I would have said, slow down, enjoy the moment. And I think you can have it all. And I don't think I ever thought somebody could have it all. And Josie, I mean, I look at you and you've got, you've got 2 young kids and you've got, you're juggling a million things. I just heard your schedule and I'm like, how do you do it? But I don't think I thought that was possible. So I thought, I thought you had to choose a path or a different path. And, and so I think I would say you stop, enjoy the moment, and you can have it all. You just got to figure it out.
And enjoy your children at their ages.
Yes.
Let me tell you right now, I'm not enjoying them. That's really great. Just to enjoy it's all about the journey, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. It's like you want you want to hit that, you want to get there. But like this is what we're doing right now is super cool. Like we're all just sitting in some random iHeartRadio, and talking about how successful you are, So enjoy it all. Meg?
I had some really good advice from Peggy Ciccone, who I worked with at SRO Anthem, and she would always remind me to stop and enjoy the moment. And she was notorious for doing the work, but then, it was her motto was like work hard and play harder. And I feel like I was very lucky to have met her when I did in my life, because I felt like I probably would have gone off the edge because I just was working too hard and didn't kind of relax and enjoy those small wins along the way, so that when you look back, you took photos of moments that were amazing. And so I would definitely say that, but staying true to yourself and authentic, find out what it is that makes you unique and find that path, because your path won't be like everyone else's. So you can look to people that I think inspire you, but it's still going to be your own path. And you can take all these little bits as you go when you're building your puzzle to yourself.
So we talked about advice to your younger self, but what about advice to people who want to get in this industry? And this is like a hard time. I mean, specifically for radio. I don't know a lot of people who are in university right now or college thinking like, yeah, I'm going to get into radio. But this industry, is volatile. It's incredibly challenging. And I don't often tell people to come into this industry unless I know they're super passionate, because I don't know if they're going to make it. So what about to the young girls who are thinking, hey, I want to be in the radio, in the publishing, in the label industry?
I'm not taking this one first.
Okay, well, you go ahead.
I think it's important to understand there's no one straight line, and you will go in different directions. And in the end, it makes sense. I went to school with someone who desperately, after we finished an MBA, wanted to go into the music industry. She worked in the music industry for 2 years. And then last year, she just finished her term as president of 3M Canada. Wow. Because her family took her to London, Ontario, and that took her into the marketing department at 3M, and she's ended up as president of 3M. But she wanted to be in the music industry. Ask her now, she's really, really happy where she landed. There's no straight line, and you may end up in the music industry without really always understanding that that's where you want to go, and that's okay.
I think we're at such a unique time right now where the arts in general and their value and the value proposition of how we pay for watching film or books or radio being curated. I think we've lost that curation. Like, I want a Dave Bookman in my life. I want a Ben Rayner Reasons to Live in my life, where I read it in the newspaper because the newspaper is actually covering music, which they don't anymore. And I feel like that value piece has been lost, and I hope that it comes back. And I truly think that we are a better society with the arts in general around us, and music is part of that brings us all together. And I think right now, post-pandemic, we've had a lot of time apart of being individually enjoying these pieces, and I hope that we're going to get back to, collaborating as a larger group and figuring out those paths. And so when I think about university, there was so many more opportunities of the student paper and the college radio, and having that level of honing your craft. Mm-hmm. And I think today's generation is, and maybe this again comes from the social media, of the instant and wanting it immediately. And we joke, but there's people that come in that they just start out at the entry level job and they want to be Kristen, tomorrow. And I think that just like any kind of valuable proposition in life, it takes the 10,000 hours or the work has to be put in. And so I'm hoping that will come around, and the people that are really passionate will still be here.
I love that. I also think, when anybody who's young, who's like, I want to be a broadcaster, Sarah, cover your ears. I want to be a broadcaster. I want to work in radio. And I say to them, like, well, radio may not be around when you're, finally after out university, but do you want to be a broadcaster on the radio, or do you want to be a storyteller? Because you're always going to need storytellers. It's just the medium might shift, right? We're always going to need the
podcasts are the new thing instead of like radio as we know it. So the sharing of stories and the curating, good stories to share with the greater public is still going to be there.
There will always be the bookies. There'll always be the bands. They're just going to be in different outlets, different places, and we're just going to have to find them. And maybe we're in a weird shift right now where we just have to find out what that next thing is.
It's actually why I'm so excited that Billboard Canada is in Canada, because I think we've lost that piece of storytelling amongst our Canadian industry as opposed to always reading the US and the UK and feeling like we are this small fish.
Absolutely.
So I'm so happy that they're here in this territory.
I agree. And I think there's something like so I would say my first question to somebody going through school for anything in the industry and for a number of other industries as well, be like, how comfortable are you with change and with a bit of ambiguity? Like, are you good? If you like that, I think it's a great business to be in, because I think if it's exciting to you, which is always, I always like change, maybe to a fault sometimes. I think it keeps, because it is that evolution of what's happening. And you're totally right. How we deliver it or how it's done may shift, and it will shift over time. But if you like that, you want to create content, you want to tell stories, you want to create art, you want to be part of that art school, I think it's as good a time as any to be in it.
Yeah, I completely agree with Sarah. I think we're in a really exciting time, although it's changed so much. And through my career, I can't believe how much change we've had. But I always say that the same thing. Listen, if you're going to get into this industry, obviously we get into it because we love music and we're passionate about music. But you do have to be somebody who can adapt and who can go with the flow and change. And listen, I feel like there's so many industries today that they're saying the same thing, because there's just so much disruption happening. But I always sort of say to people, listen, if you're the type of person who wants to go home at the end of the day and have everything checked off your to-do list, this may not be for you. And it's just the way it is. And the thing I find about the industry is that, I've been in it for a long time, but every single day I'm still learning. And I love that. Every single day, that's what gets me up out of bed. Obviously, it's for the music, it's for the artist. But the fact of the matter that I come into work every day and I'm like, I'm learning something new or I'm being challenged, this is why I'm still in it.
It's amazing. Okay, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to ask one last question, and we may have already answered it, but I guess we can kind of sum it up in advantages, disadvantages of being a woman in the music industry. Just throw that out there. I know that's a lot right away, but if anyone has an answer, advantages or disadvantages. I can start with an advantage. Do you want to? Yeah. I work at Chum. And if the audience is mostly female, and I think a long time ago we lost, because there was maybe only one or two females on air in any given radio station, you lose that. But now, being a woman, I can talk to women, and I think that's a huge advantage. Disadvantage, there's a lot to do at home, right? You're always like, for me, my husband works, I work. It's a lot. And it's a lot for anyone who wants to have a family and also be completely present in their job, especially a demanding job like all of ours.
I love it because the music publishing industry is so global, and that is creating lots of opportunities for me to travel now that my kids are out of the house. And so for my indie members, 81% of the revenue is coming from foreign sources. That was only 25% 18 years ago. It's completely changed. And so that makes it so exciting for anyone young entering in to know that you may be working with Canadian songwriters in Korea as your next stop. So there's so many more opportunities in many ways.
That's great.
Disadvantage, I think, would be in this particular industry, there's a lot of room for growth, which would be the advantage. There's a stat that Margaret had that was 6% of producers are female. That's a stat that requires work and collaboration to build that up, so there's more opportunities for female producers because they're completely capable.
And I'm going to interrupt, just say we had 6 producers in our mentorship program in last week, and the future is bright. It's really bright.
That's exactly why we fund it, and I'm very excited about that program because, again, the part of the reason why I love being at FACTOR now is being able to incentivize the behavior that we want to try and, have the industry follow into. And it's those kind of things of finding out where those gaps are that need a little bit of love and attention to show that there are females, that you can be a producer. The studio is not a scary thing. Or tech women in, tech meaning like the sound technician, the lighting tech. Those are not traditionally jobs that were welcoming to women, and I think those kind of walls and barriers are coming down, and so it is a bit more of an exciting time for that.
I think the advantage is, I think the women that have come before us and then have done a fantastic job, and I think there is that barrier that has been broken, but I think there's still a long way to go. So I think that there's, you look at a certain level, and the further up you go, the less women that there are still at that top level. And so I think that there's opportunity, and I think the next round of leaders that come up just will blow us all away.
Kristen?
Yeah, so I was going to say, I mean, just the fact that there's, the success of so many prominent women in the Canadian industry, I think it's inspirational. And I think that they're carving paths for others to follow. And I think, it's really vital, the role that they're playing, because they are really breaking those barriers and really showing that you can have success in this industry.
Guys, thank you so much. Margaret, Kristen, Sarah, Meg, you guys, I mean, you should, obviously you're so successful, and you should all feel so proud of where you are and how you're helping younger women who want to get into this industry. So thank you.
Thank you, Josie.
Thank you. Thanks, Josie.